Look, we all know legal battles can be an absolute nightmare, right? They're slow, they're stressful, and they cost a fortune. But what if I told you there's a much smarter way to solve disputes? A way that's hiding in plain sight, but for some reason, almost nobody uses it.
So, that's the big question, isn't it? Why do so many of us get stuck in these long, expensive court battles when there's a faster, cheaper option right there? That option is called mediation. Where a neutral person helps everyone find some common ground. But if it's so obviously better, why isn't everyone jumping at the chance? Well, the answer is this really fascinating puzzle of human behavior. And believe it or not, simple system design.
And right at the heart of this whole thing is a huge debate. On one side, you have people saying mediation has to be totally voluntary. You can't force people to the table, right? It's about freedom of choice. But on the other side, people are arguing, well, maybe the system should require people to at least try it before they spend years and a fortune in court. It's this classic clash. Total freedom versus let's call it a helpful nudge.
Okay, so to really understand what happens when you lean all the way into that pure choice idea, we're going to start our journey in Europe. Because what happened there with a really well-intentioned policy, well, it created a super strange outcome. And this is where we run into something called the EU mediation paradox. Here's the deal. Back in 2008, the EU passed this big directive to promote mediation. On paper, everyone loved it. Politicians, lawyers, they all agreed this is a great idea. But in the real world, crickets. Almost nobody used it. You had this massive gap between what the policy was supposed to do and what people were actually doing.
And when I say almost nobody, I'm not exaggerating. Just look at this number. Fewer than 1%. Less than 1 out of every 100 eligible cases in the entire EU actually goes to mediation. That's wild. And it tells you something absolutely crucial. Just making a good option available for people isn't even close to enough. It just doesn't work.
And this right here shows you the real-world cost of that failure. I mean, just look at these numbers. Going to court costs on average 4 times more and takes over 10 times longer than mediation. We're talking about a difference of more than a year versus about a month and a half. Europe was basically just leaving billions of euros and a mind-boggling amount of time and energy on the table.
All right, so that's the story in Europe. Now let's hop across the Atlantic, because many courts in the United States took a totally different path. And you guessed it, got totally different results.
First up, Florida. For decades now, their court system has been really proactive. For most family and civil cases, judges are actually required to refer them to mediation. It's the default setting, not some weird exception. And the results? They're just incredible. Over 2/3 of family disputes and half of civil cases get settled without ever needing a full-blown trial.
Then you've got California, a very similar story, but this time in a really sensitive area, child custody battles. There, mediation is mandatory. And get this, the system helps nearly 100,000 couples every single year. But here's the part that might surprise you. Even though it's required, people who go through it report really high satisfaction. It turns out people really value having that structured, private space to work things out away from a confrontational courtroom. And then there's New York, which has a slightly different take with its presumptive program. Presumptive just means that for certain cases, mediation is the assumed next step. It's the default path. Now, you can opt out, but you have to give a good reason why. It's a really subtle shift, but it's powerful. In just 1 year, it nudged over 12,000 cases onto that faster track to resolution. And this isn't just happening at the state level. It works in the federal system, too. This chart shows the numbers from New York's Eastern District, and wow, for really complex stuff like fair labor cases, 65% settled. For employment discrimination, 63% settled. The lesson here is crystal clear. When the system makes mediation a normal, routine step in the process, people use it, and it works.
Okay, so let's recap. We've seen 2 totally different stories, right? Europe's hands-off, please use this approach pretty much flopped. America's system of these light touch mandates was super effective. And this stark contrast points us directly to a really elegant solution, one that kind of takes the best of both worlds. And you know what's wild? The experts in Europe now agree. A huge survey was done in 2024, asking over 2,000 legal professionals there, hey, what would actually fix this mediation paradox? The answer was just overwhelming. As you can see, a massive 72% said the single most effective thing they could do is require people to show up
to just one initial meeting.
And that is the absolute core of what's called the easy opt-out model. It is so brilliantly simple because it's not about forcing anyone to do anything. It's about leveraging basic human psychology. Here's how it works. Step 1, every case is automatically scheduled for a mediation session. That makes it the default, the easy path. Step 2, you just have to show up for that one first meeting. That's it. And step 3, after that single session, you are 100% free to walk away. No penalty, no strings attached. No one is ever forced to settle.
So does this little gentle nudge actually work in the real world? Oh yeah. Just look at Italy. Before they introduced this kind of easy opt-out system, they had fewer than 10,000 mediation requests a year. After, that number skyrocketed to nearly 200,000. That is a 20-fold increase. It just proves that the hardest part is just getting people in the room. Once they're there, the magic happens. So when you step back and look at all of this, Europe, the US, Italy, a really powerful central lesson starts to emerge. And it's all about how we design better systems.
And I think this quote just captures the whole idea perfectly. When courts build mediation into the justice journey, not as a barrier but as a gateway, parties follow. It's not about building a wall to block people from court. Of course not. It's about building a gateway, an inviting, easy-to-walk-through first step that guides them toward a much better path.
And to make sure these gateways are actually working, the experts who came up with this model also suggest creating something they call a balanced relationship target number. It's basically just a clear benchmark that a court system can set for itself and track over time. It turns a fuzzy policy goal into something you can actually measure. It's all about accountability.
And that really leaves us with a much bigger question, doesn't it? Because this isn't just about the legal system. Think about it. In healthcare and finance, even in our own daily routines, how many better, smarter options are we all ignoring simply because they aren't the default choice? What if we could design better gateways everywhere to make the best choice the easiest choice for all of us?